My wife and I are A Squared Technologies. For years, everybody thought this was some scientific notation, this was some evil Masonic emblem. No. That's Amy, my wife, and I'm Adrian, and so we're A Squared. A small sampling. If your shopping cart locks up at Home Depot, if you turn on a switch voice activated, genetic research if you know about Inventors, planes going to flat spins, custom calculators, all these are products, small sample of some of the products I've developed. My focus in the last 10 years has been more in medical devices and energy devices. Some of the more fun things, this is a little electric Porsche, 270 volts worth of lithium-ion batteries with my battery management control boards on it. That's Reverend Gadget. Fun little project. What might have recognized me for is this product here. It's the infant simulator doll called Baby Think It Over. In essence, I'm its daddy. The product has been used now by 1 million kids in home ec classes. And what it does is give them a little semblance of what it is to have a baby. It cries randomly. It has sensors in it. How many of you went through high school and had to put an egg in, had to carry an egg or some flour around and pretend? Well, this has replaced all that. You can't cheat anymore. Just throw the bag of flour in the closet. You can't throw the baby in the closet. It grades you. It does data logging. It won Fortune Magazine's Product of the Year award in the mid-90s. We started with this, again, just concept. The guy was just laid off from General Dynamics, met me at my trade show there at the Del Mar Electronic Ground, said his daughter had challenged him with this idea because she thought it was insane that she's carrying around flour and her father's a rocket scientist. So they decided this was the way they were going to go. Anyway, we started from concept, ramped it up in our production facility. I do have a production facility up in San Marcos. We ramped it up to 350 units a day before it went offshore, turned into the biggest mess they had in their lives. Got cleaned up, got back on track, and it was sold. The company was sold to a company called Reality Works. I'll get to this. This is my wound treatment system I'm working on, but I worked on pain management devices. I worked on bone growth devices, all sorts of energy devices. 13 years ago, I put 2 layers of semiconductors on a plastic and made a solar cell that you could flex, and we could make power at 50 cents a watt 13 years ago. And our local congressman came up and said, Adrian, oil's cheap. Well, times have changed. So let's get this whole presentation going. Well, what's blanked out is like the whole thing here. Approach, plan, and execute is a process that I use for absolutely everybody and everything that has an idea that walks in. Approach, plan, and execute. What is it that we're getting into? What are all the questions we're going to have to find out? What are all the things we have to worry about, think about on this idea? Second stage, how can we get through those things? Planning all that. Third stage, doing it, executing it, the metrics to see if it worked. So with that as the outline, I've devised this whole presentation to show you along these phases where and how things can go awry. So to start, when you have an idea, many of you just let it go. Mistake number 1. What possibilities were there? And how many of you have been in a store at some point in your life and seen that product that you had invented or thought of at least, and you look at it going, oh my God, that could have been me. How many of you are in that category? Yes, of course. Of course. Do you realize what an asset we are to this nation? You inventors are the cutting edge. We're the greatest asset this country has as far as bringing new jobs and new ideas forth into this world. So we're also a unique breed. There's only probably 10% of the population is actually right-brained on the creative side. Use it. Be that light. Be that gift. Don't think just because life's got so many challenges that your idea is insurmountable. You don't know till you try. So mistake number 1, you're just letting the idea go by. Now, how... you've got that little brief moment. You've got 100 things going on in your life. How are you going to remember that idea? In my house, I have notepads on every desk in my house and a pen next to it. And I'm there, I have an idea, I write it down. I'll get back to it later, I'll think about it more later, but I write ideas down whenever I can allow myself to open that part of the brain. And so this is mistake number 2. You didn't capture that idea. So keep some manner, whatever it is, your favorite manner of writing something down, whether you're iPadding, texting yourself. I do send myself text messages. Come back at the end of the day and say, oh, yeah, that's right, I had an idea. anything you can do. Capture that idea some way, format, shape, or form so that you can get back to it and give it what it's worth, evaluation, which is the next step, an evaluation. I've created this. It's on my website for absolutely free. I've seen some other forms of it. I've seen a company in town that does this same thing for $99 or $199. Look, the idea is that there's, generally speaking, a list of 10 things that you should be concerned about right up front before you put a dime into your project, that at least you should put a little mental exercise in to doing some review. And if you do that and give yourself, as honest as you can, a score on this, when you're done with all of this, what you're looking for is a score, if you take this method of it, of about 49 or better. You want to get a B on your idea. And this methodology of grading your idea lets you be objective. So many of you, and again, happy Valentine's Day, fall in love with your idea. And that doesn't allow you to see clearly what the hurdles are going to be or if it's feasible, doable. Many of you take this step way too far. I've met some of you that have actually taken the second out on the house and have a warehouse of stuff that you got from China and never even thought of the first question is, will anybody buy it and for the price that you're asking for? Don't get carried away. Your hubris, your emotions have to be put aside. You have to look at this objectively. So take some method of evaluating your idea. The key factors in this, by the way, when I say estimated profitability, these are ratio numbers. So if you can think that your cost to profit margin, if you have a gross profit margin of 2, you might be able to sell it on a website. If you're getting up to here to 4 or 5, you can start getting some levels of distribution in there. So that's why this first question is, how much profitability is in there? Well, that question inherently asks, well, what is it going to cost to make it and what can I sell it for? Those questions need some research to find out. We'll get into that in a minute. Technical complexity. Obviously, if you're reinventing the wheel, that's going to be done very easily. If you're inventing a hoverboard, well, that's a different story. So the level of complexity here leads us to a few things later, which is going to be the development cost. Usually the biggest thing as complexity goes. What size market are you getting into? That's a good thing to know, be aware of. You might do extremely well in a very small vertical, as it's called. Fantastic. Otherwise, if you're a new addition into an existing market, you might as well know how big is that market, because as the math goes, if you get a small percentage of it, that could be some great numbers. So knowing your market size, how many people are in that market already. Start talking then about the intellectual property. How many patents are already out there? How unique are your patents? How many hurdles do you have legal-wise? Are there regulatory concerns? Are you talking to FDA, FDB, UL? How many of those three-lettered acronym agencies that charge you a lot of money are you going to have to suffer through? The cost of development is subject to your own finances. I've put a scale on here. You might be able to push that decimal point over, but again, it's something to evaluate. This ends with the final question, which I'll be honest with you is a trick question, but you should have some idea of what the estimated sales are. I say trick question because many of you come in and you tell me about the millions of dollars of sales you're going to get in the first year, and I'm well, we have a little reality to get into here. But overall, this I have found is a very simple way for you to do a quick evaluation on your product idea to see if it's feasible to get it going. You come into my office, please. If you've done this already, it helps a whole lot to see where your thoughts and thinking are. And by doing this, it's going to point out what other homework you need to do. The patents work, for example. Everyone who's been in my office knows the very first thing I profess you do is the patent search work. Why again, reinvent somebody's wheel? The patent search is number one. The patent search teaches you a number of things. Who the players are in the market, how crowded the field is, and so on. So that was mistake number 3. Now, what is very important is a little reality check of yourself right up front here. What do you really want to achieve? Give yourself a little SWOT analysis. What are your resources? What are your strengths and weaknesses? How many connections do you have to help you get your product launched? And when you look at all of this, you know, there's a fork in the road here. You can start a business. Time, effort, resources are needed. You can pull teams together. There's ways to do it. Successes are made all the time. But many of you already have a business or a life or other things going on, but you have this idea that's still valuable and worth doing something with, and licensing then is a great option for you to use to get some revenues from your idea. So identify yourself where you're standing in life and how strong you're standing and what your assets are, then decide to move forward. So mistake number 4. People get involved and get committed to getting a company started, and they find out that their brother-in-law or their relative, whatever, their first level connections weren't the magic answer that they thought they were, or the funding was way too difficult, or so many things as that are barriers. Reality checks. Now, this is still all in the approach phase, as I call it. Protecting the idea is so important, especially with these new patent law changes. Not everything has to be patented. Some things can't be patented. They're public domain. They've been invented already. You might have a new version of it, a new design of it, then you could apply for what's a design patent. The whole idea of intellectual property, though, is for you to have the right to stop anybody else from building and selling your product. Patent doesn't give you the right to make something illegal. It doesn't guarantee you any success. The patent gives you the right to stop anybody or outside from the country bringing products in that infringe on your intellectual property. With the patent laws that are changing, this first to invent law is no friend really to the small inventor, as everybody knows here. What this new law means is if you hear an idea, you run over to your computer, you type it in, you pay that entry fee, and it's your idea. But you heard it from somebody else. But that guy didn't know how to use the computer. They took your idea. So it's very important. It's really changed quite a bit. Not speaking out of hat at all. There's a number of things that you can get protection on. If your design is not a new method or apparatus, but it is a unique style of something, that design, that style, can be patented. And it's quite often that you would accompany it with a trademark or the logo. So everywhere you go now, when you hear the name, that shape comes into mind and vice versa. Very powerful. That's good intellectual property. Good combination to have. Your written material is automatically copyrighted now under the Burns Act, I believe. Non-disclosure agreements are still, of course, a course of action. But because of this change in the patent law, once you have that provisional patent filed, you might want to use the NDAs and MDAs because your business aspects you want to keep proprietary. Trade secrets. Don't tell anybody. They'll never know. All right? So, protecting your intellectual property. This is why it's important. I became engineering manager of a company called Astrogard when a gentleman named Daryl Issa took it off and split it to create directed electronics. A week after Daryl went and started directed electronics, I was hired and actually built and manufactured 500 of the very first car alarm that will lock your door and flash your lights with a remote control. I didn't know anything about patents. Need I say more? How many know what directed electronics makes and does here in the room? Who's heard of the Viper car alarm system? Okay, 56 million a year, Congressman Daryl Issa now. Yes. I didn't know anything about patents, though. Patents are important. Number 2, I went to Eureka in 1986. A little device that I had built that would run around and would vacuum your floors. I called it the rug bug. They laughed me out of the room. Who do you think we are, the Jetsons, they said? Get out of here, robots. Well, what is it called today? Right. I didn't know anything about patents. I'm not going to go on. I think you're getting the message. All right. That's how important patents are. Now, how will you convey or show your idea? And the next one, to who, when, and why. I was, again, up at this panel here in San Jose, and many questions were asked between events going on to the panelists. And one of them was a really good question is, what is it that these entrepreneurs do wrong? What is it? They're asking the VCs this. You know, what is it that you don't like about the entrepreneurs? What are the 3 things? The one was the people that show up with the Me Too. You don't really have anything new. You're just copying somebody else. What's the benefit? The benefit there. The second one was no focus. So when you say you have 4 or 5 things to go, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to give you $1 million, you get to press the one gas pedal. That's it. One gas pedal. They're putting money into one project. You're not going to get all your projects financed at once unless they're all connected or coordinated. So focus was very, very important. Lastly, people that show up and they're just, it's too immature. It's just not at all the right time. So mistake number 6 is planning your presentation. The stages that you go through to get ready to present are very important, and that's all, again, dependent on who you're going to talk to and when. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between these. Many of you think you're going to go to a VC because you got an idea. Venture capitalists don't venture in anything. They're not a seed fund. Venture capitalists will put money in once you have a running organization, and their money in gives you a more formulated return on that investment. So jumping right into talk to a VC or banker is probably far-fetched unless you're a great personal connection with the guy. Of course, manufacturers, if you don't have a working model, come back later. Now with the new patent laws, you just gave it away. Look at this as the process of steps that you would normally go through. You're going to talk to your friends and family. After that, they'll introduce you, or you'll get to meet the groups here in San Diego, the professional groups, such as the Angels. Connect, Springboard is a group here in town that helps you go from your first concept to getting your team's plans together, your presentation, so you are qualified to pitch. Fantastic group. They charge nothing for that. You end up sometimes with a fantastic team of really experienced entrepreneurs. They will get you introduced to the VCs, and that was the thing about the VC group that I thought was kind of amazing. Excuse me, not amazing, amusing. We all spent a few thousand actually to be there, and on the panel they stand up and they say, well, we don't actually talk to any of you unless we're introduced by somebody qualified. What? I just flew all the way up here to meet you, and you're basically saying, yes, I'll talk to you if you're introduced. And that was all, really, to paraphrase, what all of them had as their opinion. You need to be qualified. You need to be introduced by somebody that they've probably had some business with. And you think, well, how do I, that's crazy. That's chicken before the egg. No, it's really simple. It's called LinkedIn. And matter of fact, that was the question. I was the last, I asked a question. You know, sometimes you can ask a question. When it came to how do you get in contact with these VCs, they had put it out there that, well, you get on LinkedIn and you'll probably find somebody in your network that can introduce you to us. Well, I turned that around at the end of the meeting and I said, yes, you've said that's how we get introduced to you. Do you use LinkedIn to validate us, to do your due diligence on us? They exploded. Oh yeah, absolutely. We're all agreeing with each other. One put their hands up. That's why I invested in LinkedIn, so we can find out about you. So it became very apparent to me it was quite wise for me to have been building up my LinkedIn profile now to where I have over 100-something endorsements and all those recommendations, because now when somebody looks at you, there is your track record. All right. We're into the planning stage now, okay? Every idea you've ever had might be a business opportunity. So treat it as such. You've got to make a plan. If you don't, you're going to wander aimlessly. You won't have a goal. It's hard enough being an entrepreneur because you're basically accountable to nobody. So to change that around, write yourself a plan. Follow it. Share it with somebody. If you've never written a business plan, there is software out there that makes it very simple to get it started. Palo Alto has a great package out there. They have 500 models right in the package of all kinds of different businesses. Click, go, fill in the variables. You'll have a customized business plan with some graphics. If nothing else, it's a great thought starter to know what it is it's going to take to get your business plan together. Business plans are put together because you might be pitching money. You might, well, even for the licensing agreements, it's really for your own focus. You can spend a lot of time in your garage and diddle and fiddle and think of great things, but it never goes anywhere. Spend a few minutes and jot down where you want to go with your idea, and the essentials are what's your product, what's the pain, excuse me. You start off with what's the market, the pain as it's called, your product, how does it solve these solutions, what's your team, how much money you're going to need, what the money is used for. Team. A few of you have offered, and I will take you up on it when the time's right, to actually do a presentation just about team making. You will never do it, well, Excuse me. It is so much easier if you will surround yourself with the best people you can and the world works right. Every project you have, just get the best people you can to help you out in all the aspects that you just don't have any mastery of. Why beat yourself up if you're not a financial person to do your financial planning, if you're not a marketing person to do your marketing, if you're not an engineer to try to be doing the design work? How many hats do you want to wear? How long do you want to take to get your idea there? Get the help. There's great talent here in San Diego dying to come aboard and help you on your projects. Again, I'm speaking about Connect and Springboard. So do what you do best, and that way you'll excel. You'll shine, especially if you're the CEO or the founder. You're going to have to be the champion. You're going to have to be the cheerleader. You're going to have to be the fundraiser. You might have had fun once upon a time working in the lab. Now you've got some new chores, if that's what you're up to. If not, stay in that lab and get somebody that does know how to be an executive and run the company and take it to the next level for you. So, get help. That's mistake number 9. Now, getting started, most people don't realize that there are... Well, let's see. That's the 10th mistake. Let me see. I'll grant you this. I might have jostled them. So 10 might come next. This was a 5th edition. Maybe the 6th one will get it right. Okay. We'll get to they'll be back, or we'll get it to you later. We have so many steps in getting something launched, and many people really underestimate the time and effort that it takes to get things going. Sometimes things are simpler. I've had some things we call popcorn jobs. You come in the office, and 9 months from now, we're going to have products that are ready to show. You can go to trade shows with. Other things, especially if it's a little more intricate, are going to take months and months to get going. There's some time frames for things. Usually time means money. You're going to have to budget for those things accordingly. And that's where this comes in, that if you underestimated severely and you only expected to spend so much money on doing something, well, then you're really embarrassed to say, oops, I underestimated. I usually take all my estimates, I'll show you in a minute how we do this, and I double them. This is how we do this. This is a format that I created as a standardized format. Matter of fact, I've been hired as a professional forensic evaluator of a company that had 52 products that it lost in a fire. And they asked me to reevaluate how much was lost by this fellow losing all of his work. And it just so happened I've been using this formula for quite a long time. So many of you will come to me, I have this standard format, and this is just a simple spreadsheet. And by color coordinating tasks to names, what we do is we go through 5 steps of the product development, from the first step of capturing it, analyzing the concept, planning things. In this case, this is a template for a simple electromechanical device. That's more my forte. But the steps we go through, from sketching circuits, testing them, breadboarding, building these things up and making them work, all of this is coordinated at the same time you're planning your business. The presentation, now this is just to do, well, even a license agreement. To get to the stage to where you've got something that's ready to show and you know what you're talking about and you know what you want. There's 48 steps here that I suggest you get familiar with, because you'll probably have to employ these. So as, again, you're developing the product, as you find out what it needs to be a product, what people, and what it's going to take to make one actually work, you're looking at your presentation, your logos, your patent work, you're finding out your costs so you can put your presentation together. Just a second, Jerry. And practicing your presentation. I mentioned in here the part about videos. It's so prevalent now and so important to have that little user's video. Just a second. At the end, we'll get back to it. The presentation itself. I just mentioned that it's a bit of a process that you're going to go through. And even knowing who it is you're going to present it to takes some planning. So there's a format, all part of this planning phase here. Okay? I'm going to go all the way through the presentation, and then we'll come back for some questions, Jerry. Thank you. Execution phase. Of course, if it's worth doing it right. Using your resources. There's mistake 10. I did reorganize these a bit because I think this is a little more appropriate now. Again, this is now we're into the execution phase. We talked about the approach. What are the questions? How am I going to do this? Why am I going to do it? Can I do it? We talked about the planning now. what's it going to take and all the stages and the steps I'm going to do. Now executing, coming up even with your first working model and how are we getting it there. So mistake number 10 is not delegating. It comes back to that not having a team, not getting out of your own way. This happens just all the time. And what happens is you end up a real stressful mess because you're micromanaging things. You're piled on with these problems that you hate dealing with because they're not your forte. You're all those things that lead nowhere. Turn that around. Get out of your own way. Delegate. Bring friends aboard. Give up a little bit of your company. Share the wealth. Share the dream. Get excited and get really good qualified people around you, and things happen. Things take off. And then you'll have a smiley face. All right. Now, from a manufacturing engineering background, one of the biggest problems and nightmares I've seen are changing the specs. You finally decided you want to have something made, and you come to a manufacturing firm, and then before they've even given you the first model, you're changing the specs. You're changing the features. You've decided, well, you were just premature in getting it started in the first place. Have a set of specs. We call them jello specs because you can't nail it on the wall, right? It just flows off. It's just not a set target. We want exact specs based on what your market research found out for you that the customer wants. Products are market driven. They were your ideas, but the actual final product is market driven. Oftentimes there's engineers that are way too ambitious and create things, and there's a basic formula when it comes to using new parts. Don't put more than 3, never more than 5 new components in a design. I was a team captain for the DARPA challenge a few years ago. That was to make a car drive itself automatically from Barstow to Vegas. And we bootstrapped. We only had a few $1,000s into it. Great team of scientists and engineers, artificial intelligence guys. We got through second phase. We had this little 3-wheel car ready to go. And we had one engineer that decided, I'm going to use the latest new chipsets to get some interface work on this machine done for us. Well, the long story short is we had a meeting. We were supposed to show NASA. The board didn't work. He's scrambling all night to make this thing work. It was an overreach of the technicality because he was using parts that had never been tested in a time-critical situation. Big, huge mistake. Avoidable. So unproven parts, obsolete technology. Please don't go to a garage sale or a scrap house, buy something, come home, make something, and come in and say, yeah, this is how we're going to build it, because those parts might have become obsolete. It could have, who knows where those things came from. So that's the changing the specs. Get Gen 1 out, then you can do your revisions. The other big problem there is that I don't know if it's on there about the trade shows. Okay. Many of you will come in all excited. Oh, Adrian, there's a trade show in 2 weeks. I need my prototype now. Well, I wasn't going to deliver it for another 2 months. I need it now. Well, if you need it bad, you get it bad. Okay? Trade shows come on all the time. Don't freak out because there's a trade show next week. Because if you want your product that bad and you're going to go to that trade show, you're probably going to blow it. And I've seen that happen. We had a company that took an alarm system that we designed for them custom. Too big of a hurry. The last feature, we had the whole thing working. The last feature is I didn't connect the 2 wires that would charge the batteries. I gave it to him fully charged because he only had 1 show to go to that afternoon. I went, great, go, it'll last 2-3 days, no problem. 2 months later, he's trying to sue me. I'm not kidding. This thing didn't work. Well, the batteries had died. He kept it. He never brought it back. He went to other things. It didn't work because the batteries had died. He wanted it bad. He got it bad. And we all got embarrassed. He lost his case in court, though. Thank you for letting me share. So, yeah, stay on track. Sidestepping for the trade shows. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Yes, test before selling. Another story, just sharing these stories. I was a test engineer for a company called Oak Systems. Any of you remember Oak Systems? Carlsbad company built TV decoder boxes for a cable channel called On TV, the first ones in the country. Okay? In the test engineering department, my job was I was responsible for building the test fixtures so that the circuit boards could be proven to work before they went on further into production. Fully automated facility. The carts come in and the people all have little pictures on how to put 2 parts in a board, and the whole assembly line works that way. So the whole factory was automated, and they spent millions of dollars gearing up for their next generation product. They geared up the whole factory for this next generation product. In other words, they were geared for production, all ready to go. Then they came to test engineering saying, oh, please put the test fixtures together so we can get them on the floor. I get their circuit boards, they're all ready to go into production with, and I'm working on it, and it'll pass a scrambled signal, but it won't pass a standard signal, meaning the thing was absolutely ineffective and useless. The next Thursday, they fired 2,500 people. The Thursday after that, another 2,500, and the Thursday after that, 1,700 people, and that was the end of Oak Systems. They didn't test. The simplest thing. So that's just one example. Test. Yes, Jerry. Testing is that important. Major investments can be lost because you just didn't take that one simple test. I love seeing things that are kid tested, literally kid tested. My background began at UCLA. I was building devices for kids without limbs, prosthetics. We had some very fancy engineers and products and devices that cost tens of thousands of dollars. We give it to a kid, he'd run out in the sandbox, he'd come back in with a pile of parts going, here. That was the best way to learn, really, how well this thing's going to work. So I'm a very big fan of kid tested and mother approved, of course. So yes, testing is mistake number 14, not testing it. So this is coming down to the last of the 3. The 3 most common mistakes have to do with the 3 M's: money, management, motivation. Money, biggest problem. If you don't have a plan to raise money, well, plan on not having any money. It's as simple as that. You have to have resources, you have to have some planning, you have to find some networks that are in the niche that you're interested in, or have a presentation qualified enough to convince people that you know what you're talking about and you're worth putting some money into. Again, those estimates you came up with, build in a safety margin. Why fall flat? Build in that safety margin. Double your estimates. Contingency plans, just what that means. All the time, it seems, as an entrepreneur, you are in pursuit of funds. So imagine that this isn't just one time you're going to get funding. You probably need capital after that. You're going to need equipment perhaps after that, or marketing budgets after that. So thinking of the string of funding that you need. And why you want to think of that and plan ahead and have those sort of things is because bootstrapping, well, there's pains. I've had some amazing projects that would have changed the world, but without the right presentations and teams and so on, we had to bootstrap. And the pain with that was years and years taken out of my life, and at the end, nothing to really show for it. Don't just try to bootstrap it. It's much better to have a small piece of a big pie than all of nothing. Okay? Using your resources wisely, the second biggest mistake. Patents. 90,000 are abandoned every year. They went nowhere. If you need your ego, get the patent, get the trophy, put it all together, you've got your display case. But we see people going after patents when it just shouldn't have been. A lot of the things that you're working on just need that provisional patent filed, a good sell sheet. All right. Tooling is an old-fashioned way of manufacturing. We used to actually remove metal from blocks, pour plastic in, make a part. No more. We've got new technologies now that actually grow a part out of powders and laser beams, and the part is made without any tooling. So what used to cost you 10, 20, 30, hundreds of thousands even in tooling can now be made for hundreds of dollars. Don't spend your money on tooling for a prototype, not unless you absolutely have to. Matter of fact, there's more things nowadays that can be made by 3D printing than you can actually machine because you can build them inside out. The race of going offshore. We need jobs. We need businesses. There's great talent here. The reasons companies left offshore, those benefits, as we mentioned earlier today, might be changing, and they are changing. And the whole the whole infrastructure of the world is changing. When we started years ago going to China, the cost per hour rate was less than $1 an hour. Now it's over $3. So Chinese are up to $3 an hour. There's many reasons that you really need to consider. All of the assets we have here in this country are ready, available, waiting, and are going to make it so much easier to get your product developed and launched. Now, I grant you this, that once it comes into the mass production quantities, there's great benefits still to going offshore, but the biggest mistake people make is jumping offshore and expecting the Chinese, especially, to make your prototype. They'll do it, and you'll get it back, and you open the box, and it's nothing like you want. You want some changes made, and it's going to take months. It's a big disaster. You want your design work done here, the development work done here, the product debugged here, all your parts identified and sourced, because when you go to China, they'll do exactly what you say if you have the quality controls installed. They'll also do whatever they can to make it as cheap as possible if you don't. So, advertising too early. There's a big mistake too. It's very embarrassing if you go out trying to promote a product and you haven't even proven one works yet. Just as simple as that. And of course, it's not going to be helping your credibility much if you're out buying fancy cars and you don't have your product to market yet. So those extravagant expenses kind of have to wait until you get some profits going. So your premature investments, those are mistakes number 16. And considering the advice, I think for every single one of these areas, you can find a very qualified advisor here in town that will tell you how to use your money wisely on patents, on tooling, on manufacturing, on your marketing, and all of your financial plannings. That brings us to the final mistake, and it's one of the signs of successful people. One of them is the ability to have what's called intelligent persistence. So the mistake is giving up too soon. The old adage that the guy was only a few feet from that vein of gold. You have to want it. You have to live it. You have to dedicate your life to it. If you stay focused, you'll have a lot better chance. But the main thing is the persistence. You're going to hit bumps. You're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to have hurdles. You're going to have pushbacks. At the presentation during the coaching session, right after my presentation, again, there's some VCs in here, and the one gal stands up and she says, "I don't even understand why you're doing this. There have been so many train wrecks in this industry." Well, I had to come back up to her afterwards and explain to her that I'm going to be persistent about this because, yes, there's been failures in the past, but when the time comes that somebody actually does finally make this work, that's the paradigm shift that's going to change the world. Now, I've been doing this 7 years. Ups and downs, ins and outs, but now it's actually taking off. Just another example. Persistence. Okay? A quote Mr. Roosevelt wrote here many years ago, who said that the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood and strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself for a worthy cause, who at the best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he will fail while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. A little bit of poetry. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the 17 mistakes inventors make. I'm very thankful that you gave me your time today. Namaste.